The collision happened so fast that Maya didn't even have time to gasp. One moment she was rushing through the crowded downtown street, her worn sneakers pounding the pavement as she clutched a brown paper bag of donated sandwiches, and the next she was sprawling forward, watching in horror as the food scattered across the sidewalk. Her knee hit the concrete with a sharp crack, and tears sprang to her eyes, not from the pain, but from the crushing weight of failure that settled over her shoulders like a familiar, suffocating blanket. "I'm so sorry. I didn't see you. Are you okay?" A deep voice cut through the chaos of her thoughts, and strong hands gently helped her to her feet. Maya looked up into the most striking pair of gray eyes she'd ever seen, set in a face that seemed carved from marble and concern. "I'm fine," she whispered automatically, though her knee throbbed and her heart raced with embarrassment. The man was impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than her entire year's rent. And here she was in her threadbare jeans and faded university sweatshirt, causing a scene on the sidewalk. She immediately dropped to her knees again, scrambling to gather the scattered sandwiches, most of which were now ruined, their contents spilling across the dirty pavement. "Please let me help." The stranger knelt beside her without hesitation, his expensive suit be damned, and began collecting the fallen food. "Where were you headed with these?" Maya's cheeks burned. "The shelter on 5th Street. I volunteer there on Thursdays." She clutched the few salvageable sandwiches to her chest, fighting back the tears that threatened to spill over. "I used my last $20 to buy the ingredients. These people, they're counting on me." The stranger paused, studying her face with an intensity that made her uncomfortable. "Then we'll get more." "Come on!" Before Maya could protest, he was on his feet, offering his hand again. Something in his tone brooked no argument, and she found herself accepting his help, letting him pull her up, despite every instinct that screamed she should just disappear into the crowd. His name was James Crawford, and Maya learned this only because he introduced himself as they walked into a nearby deli, where he proceeded to order enough sandwiches, soups, and meals to feed 50 people. She stood awkwardly by the counter, acutely aware of the difference between them. Him in his designer clothes, her in her Salvation Army best, her knee still bleeding slightly through her torn jeans. "You really don't have to do this," Maya protested weakly as the deli staff packed up bag after bag of food. "I can make more tomorrow." "But people are hungry today," James replied simply, pulling out a credit card that gleamed black in the fluorescent light. "Besides, I was the one who bumped into you. Let me make it right." Something shifted in Maya's chest at those words. In her 23 years of life, she'd learned to expect very little from people, especially those who had plenty. She'd grown up in foster care, bounced between homes that saw her as a paycheck rather than a person. She'd put herself through community college working 3 jobs, graduated with honors, and still couldn't find work that paid enough to cover both rent and food. She volunteered at the shelter because she remembered what it felt like to be invisible, to be hungry, to be forgotten. And here was this man, this obvious millionaire. Given the way the deli staff suddenly snapped to attention when he entered, treating her like she mattered, like her mission mattered. They walked to the shelter together, James insisting on carrying most of the bags despite Maya's protests. The regular guests' faces lit up when they saw the unexpected bounty, and Maya found herself explaining James's presence, watching as he shook hands with veterans and single mothers, as he crouched down to talk to children at their eye level, as he listened, really listened, to their stories without a trace of judgment or pity. "You're a natural at this," Maya said softly as they handed out the last of the meals. "Most people can't see past their own discomfort." James smiled, but there was a sadness in it that Maya recognized. "My mother used to volunteer at a place like this when I was young. Before she died, she made me promise to remember that wealth and worth aren't the same thing, that money is just a tool, and the measure of a person is in how they use it." He paused, looking around the crowded shelter. "I'll admit I've gotten caught up in building my business. It's been years since I've done something this real." "What kind of business?" Maya asked, though she was almost afraid of the answer. "Tech, software development." James's expression turned sheepish. "Crawford Technologies. We develop applications for financial management and business solutions," Maya finished, her eyes widening. You're that James Crawford. Your software is used by half the Fortune 500 companies in America. Guilty, he admitted. But right now, I'm just James, the guy who nearly knocked you over and ruined dinner for 50 people. They started talking, really. Talking as they cleaned up the shelter's dining area. Maya told him about her dreams of becoming a social worker, about the applications to graduate school she couldn't afford to pursue. James shared stories about building his company from nothing, about the loneliness that came with success, about how his palatial house felt emptier than any place he'd ever lived. "Why do you do it?" James asked as they walked out into the cooling evening air. "Volunteer here, I mean, when you clearly have your own struggles." Maya considered the question, watching the sun set between the buildings, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose. "Because I know what it's like to need someone and have nobody show up. I know what it's like to be invisible. If I can make even one person feel seen, feel valued, then maybe my own hard times weren't for nothing. Maybe they taught me something important about what it means to be human." James stopped walking, turning to face her fully. "I'd like to see you again. Not because of what happened today, but because in the 2 hours I've known you, you've reminded me of something I'd forgotten. You've reminded me why any of this matters." Maya's heart stuttered in her chest. I don't come from your world." "James, I work at a coffee shop and volunteer at shelters. I live in a studio apartment with 4 other girls. We're from different planets. Maybe that's exactly why we should get to know each other better," James said gently. "Maybe we both have something to teach each other." Over the following weeks, Maya discovered that James Crawford was nothing like she'd expected. He showed up at her coffee shop every morning, always leaving tips that made her co-workers gasp. He started volunteering at the shelter regularly, using his connections to establish a foundation that would ensure its continued operation. He took Maya to dinners at restaurants she'd only read about in magazines, but he also joined her for pizza on her apartment's fire escape, listening to her roommate's stories with genuine interest. He never made her feel small, never made her feel like his charity case. Instead, he made her feel like the most important person in any room they entered together. He asked about her day, her dreams, her fears. He encouraged her to apply for graduate school, and when she was accepted, he offered to fund her education, not as a gift, but as an investment in someone he believed in. "I can't accept this," Maya had protested, the acceptance letter trembling in her hands. "It's too much." "It's not nearly enough," James had replied, taking her hands in his. "Maya, from the moment you scrambled to pick up those sandwiches instead of worrying about your bleeding knee, I knew you were extraordinary. You have a gift for seeing people, really seeing them. The world needs more people like you in positions where they can make a difference. Let me help you get there." It was on a Thursday evening, exactly 3 months after their collision, that James took Maya back to the spot where they'd first met. The same crowded street, the same autumn chill in the air. But this time, when he looked at her, there was something different in his eyes, something that made her breath catch. "I've been thinking about fate lately," James said, his hands cupping her face with infinite tenderness. "About how one random moment can change everything. I could have walked down any street that day. You could have left 5 minutes earlier or later. But we found each other in that chaos and you changed my life. Maya, you made me remember what it means to be human. What it means to care about something beyond quarterly earnings and market shares." "You changed mine too," Maya whispered, tears streaming down her cheeks. "You showed me that there are still good people in the world. People who see beyond circumstances to the person underneath." "I'm falling in love with you," James said simply. "Actually, I think I fell in love with you the moment you tried to save those sandwiches instead of worrying about yourself. I fell in love with your enormous heart, your fierce dedication to making the world better one person at a time. I fell in love with the way you see me, not as a millionaire or a CEO, but just as James, the person I want to be when I'm with you." Maya laughed through her tears, pulling him close. "I fell in love with you too, somewhere between the deli counter and your terrible attempts at making soup at the shelter. Somewhere between fancy restaurants and fire escape dinners. You saw me, James, really saw me. Do you know how rare that is? Their kiss tasted like salt and promise, like new beginnings and second chances. Around them, the city rushed on, thousands of people passing by, each absorbed in their own worlds. But in that moment, Maya and James stood still, two souls who had collided by chance and chosen each other by design. A year later, Maya would be thriving in graduate school, still volunteering at the shelter every Thursday, but now alongside James, who had restructured his entire company to prioritize ethical practices and charitable giving. The foundation they established together would go on to help thousands of people, proving that true wealth wasn't measured in bank accounts but in lives touched and hearts changed. Their story would become something of a legend at the shelter, the poor girl and the millionaire who found each other on a crowded street and discovered that love isn't about what you have, but about what you're willing to give, about seeing the humanity in every person you meet, about understanding that we're all just one moment, one choice, one act of kindness away from changing someone's life forever. Because sometimes the most valuable things in life aren't planned or purchased. Sometimes they collide with you on a Thursday afternoon, scattering sandwiches and expectations, opening your eyes to possibilities you never dared to imagine. And if you're brave enough to look past surfaces and circumstances, you might just find something more precious than any fortune. You might find someone who sees your soul and loves it completely, exactly as it is.